Thank you very much, Glenn. I think you'll agree it's a very interesting presentation with a lot of information for you to take away tonight. Excuse me. For those of you who are interested in a solar system, Healesville CoRE actually works with different organisations to try to enable the take-up of solar systems by our community for residences and businesses. And at the moment, we're working with the Yarra Ranges Council. It has a system that they're running with a number of councils together called Solar Savers, and you can register your interest to get solar panels and or batteries through the Solar Savers program. And the advantage of doing that is that you know that you've got some reputable installers with warranted systems, and you don't have to worry about going out into the marketplace and trying to find someone who might be reliable. These installers are supervised by solar savers and by people who come in and check the systems afterwards, so you've got a guarantee pretty much that you're going to get a pretty good system in place. I think it was about 9 years ago that I put in a solar system on my rooftop, and at the same time I bit the bullet and decided to go for solar hot water as well. And essentially I don't have a power bill. I do earn some money from the export of solar in the hot months of the year, and that goes to balance the expenditure in the colder months of the year. Now, that will change because the feed-in tariff is going down all the time. It's only about 11.5 cents. I think I'm getting about 13 cents from my retailer at the moment. But I think it's just in the last day or two been reduced again. And that's further argument for what Glenn was saying earlier about using as much energy as you possibly can in your own place and putting in something like a heat pump for your hot water enables you to be able to utilise that energy during the day. Okay, so we've come to the time now to hear more about heat pumps, and I'd like to hand you over to JasonParson. Jason, if you'd like to come to the microphone, we'll give Jason a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. Glenn, got to say, what a great presentation. I always learn something every time, and there's a few little things even that I've learnt tonight. So everyone, importantly, please feel free. Jeff, much to your disgust, there is a little bit of technical information in here tonight. So anyone who has any sort of question, please put your hand up. Tell me to stop and we can discuss. Doris had some great questions before, and I'd be interested in discussing that further with you. So my name's JasonParson. I'm from a company called Reclaim Energy. We've been around now for around 2 years. So we do what's called a CO2 heat pump, which is the refrigerant being CO2, which is a naturally occurring refrigerant in the atmosphere, and we can basically draw the ambient air, convert that into energy, and that's what we call air to water heating cycle. So there's a picture of the unit there on the screen, and for everyone that is streaming at the moment. So we've basically got what looks like an air conditioning split system, and we've got what we call a storage tank there too. So what we're going to talk about tonight is why a heat pump. Okay, everyone knows a heat pump. It can be called a few things like these things here. They're called heat pumps. We're a air-to-water heat pump as opposed to air-to-air. So that's basically hot water as opposed to air conditioning. How a heat pump works, why we use a CO2 refrigerant, a bit of an overview on our system being the Reclaim Energy CO2 system, certainly some key advantages on why you would do this, our smart controller features, which will be something you'll be interested in, Doris. Our range of hot water tanks, so we do different hot water tanks depending on where and what type of water quality you have in Healesville. I'm not sure if everyone, I actually live here myself as well, so we're lucky enough to have some of the best water quality in Australia. So it's really good water quality. So all of the range of tanks will sort of suit our water quality. Integration with solar analytics and PV. Glenn touched on some of that before, and we can. I've got a couple of little models here that we can show you. The rebates that are available, so the three versions, we've got what we call STC, VEEC, and the Solar Victoria rebate. We've got a bit of a case study to share with you all tonight, so you can have a bit of a look and understand the advantages in buying a system, and we've got some installation pictures on how the systems look once they're installed. So, why a Reclaim Energy heat pump? So, pretty simple. It uses a lot less energy than a resistive element type water heater. We use, depending on the heating cycle, around the 900 to 1100 watt mark. It is a clean, renewable source of energy as well. So as we can integrate our system, I suppose, with the likes of PV, for whoever's in the room, you're lucky enough to have solar on your house, we can actually utilise that energy that you'd otherwise be exporting to the grid, getting, what was it, Jeff, 13 cents a kilowatt, and using our system as a storage device. So instead of exporting that excess energy, I suppose, to the grid, we can use that and store that, and then we can release that later in the way of using showers, using baths when you want. High efficiency in what we call a COP, which is a coefficient performance. I'm not going to go too much into that. That's basically the amount of energy that goes into the unit as opposed to the energy that comes out, and I'll touch on that a little bit. The integration with PV, as I said, and Glenn touched on it before, we've got on our smart controller, which I'll talk to a little bit more, we've got some different options. So you can do your heating cycle whenever you want. So the system needs to basically do a daily heating cycle as per the Australian standard, and that can generally work quite well with a system, say 4.4 kilowatt. We would use, on a really sunny day, we would use maybe a quarter of that energy to do your full heating cycle for the day. And then when you get home at night, you'd have a tank full of hot water, have a nice hot shower. And importantly, we're eligible for all the national and state rebate programs such as STC, VEEC and VIC Solar, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So, Jeff will love this. So the technical sort of side, anyone who's a bit of a tech head will understand that basically we're a reverse cycle air conditioner. So instead of, if anyone stood in front of a split siphon air conditioner, it blows out a tremendous amount of hot air. So we do the opposite. We blow out a heap of cold air. We're drawing that ambient air temperature in, putting it through the heat exchanger and converting that to energy in the water. So there's a bit of a rundown here on how that all sort of works with the expansion valve, the fan, all the bits and pieces there. Importantly, the refrigerant we use is an R744 refrigerant, which is a naturally found gas in the atmosphere. So anyone who knows some of those older style heat pumps or older style air conditioners that are really particularly nasty for the environment, we use a natural refrigerant. So which is about as good as what you can get in the market too. So yeah, in that obviously the global warming potential is nearly zero for our unit. So because of that gas, generally any air conditioner will release its gas at some stage in its life, even though refrigeration mechanics and that do their best to capture that has to be released at some stage. With ours naturally occurs anyway. So even when it does release, it's not going to damage the environment. So it was a big thing in the 80s with the CFC revolution and all that sort of stuff. And there we've got the CO2 is one of the few natural refrigerants which is neither flammable or toxic, which is important. So inexpensive, widely available, and does not affect the global environment as do many other refrigerants, as I said before. So and there's obviously a net surplus of CO2. We're all trying to get rid of this stuff, aren't we? So we just turn it into heating. So there's a bit of a system overview, and we've got a system there installed. So we've got basically our storage tank on the right hand side, and that's basically our energy storage device. We've got our CO2 compressor there. One thing with our particular units is they're incredibly quiet. So when they start up, they are whisper quiet, which is important. So, because a lot of times these are outside bedroom areas and that, we want to make sure that they're incredibly quiet. In Healesville, as I said, I live here so we can have some frosty mornings, unlike a lot of the other sort of cheaper heat pumps in the market. Ours will work down to minus 10 degrees, which is well and truly enough to get down to the temperatures we have here in Healesville of the minus 3s, maybe a minus 4 on a really nasty frost. So then we've got our smart external controller. Importantly with that, we've got, there's another slide coming on this, that controller enables us to use the energy or store the energy when we want to, okay? So we can have it in 5 different modes. We can have thermistor mode, which is if you're a high demand user and you don't necessarily have PV on your house, once the tank temperature drops, the unit starts and it starts its heating cycle. And then once it's hot enough, it'll turn off. Option 2 and 3 are both off-peak cycles, so we can utilise some of that off-peak energy. Option 4 is our solar PV cycle. So we can, basically the unit will do its heating cycle between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Option 5 is fully customisable. Okay, so if we want to utilise that solar PV process, or that cycle, I suppose, from that 10 a.m. to 4 p.m, we can actually put another little sneaky cycle in the morning to make sure that you've got enough hot water for that morning. So, if you demand, because the units won't start after 4 p.m, so if you had a couple of long showers, you had 3 or 4 showers. I know I've got 2 little kids at home and an extravagant wife that do like to have a fed ink and go out our hot water. You can actually add a second cycle there, so you can run it at say 5 a.m. till 7 a.m. in the morning, and have enough hot water to have that shower in the morning. Importantly, we're eligible for the STC rebates. Now in Healesville, to give you guys a little bit of an idea on the value, STCs in what we are Zone 5 here is currently around about the $36, depending on the tank you get, would average out between $1,100 and $1,200 just for STC rebates. In addition to that, we've got another level of rebate called VEEC, which is Victorian Energy Efficiency Certificates. Currently, that is trading very, very similar to the STC rebates, so that they both run at around about the $1,100 to $1,200, depending on the system that you get. We do have 4 different size systems to suit different size families and different demand loads. So, and then we've also got the VIC Solar rebate, which Glenn touched on before, which is basically $1,000 rebate for a solar hot water changeover from an electric resistive element system. Now that, as Glenn sort of touched on again, and he did such a good job and didn't steal too much of my thunder, you only get that once. Okay, so that rebate you get once, and whether or not you claim it on solar PV or whether you excuse me, whether or not you claim it on your solar hot water, you only get that once. So it is also means tested, so it's got to do with incomes, property values, all that sort of stuff too. Now, if that is of interest to you, we need to pre-register for that prior to the commitment of getting a new water heater. And importantly, the warranty. So we all want to get some return on our investment. Is 6 years on the heat pump, 10 years on the GL tanks, GL meaning glass line, so they are a steel tank with a glass line, 15 years on a stainless tank, and 2 years on the controller, on the smart controller. So that's a bit of a system overview on how the system works there. We've got our compressor. With the way that we heat hot water is traditionally different, okay? With a standard electric resistive element sort of type water heater, we've got an element stuck in the side of the there. Now that heats from the bottom up. What we do, we draw water from the bottom of the tank, put it through the heat exchanger and return it right to the top of the tank. Now the reason why we do that is, one, it's probably the most efficient way to heat hot water, and the big other reason that we do it is that demand is available straight away. Okay, so anyone that's run out of hot water and has had to wait for the element to kick in and for the water heater to heat up, with our unit, when it's running, you'll have enough hot water for a shower after 20 minutes of the unit running. So they're incredibly good at recovering for a short sort of shower if for instance, you're in PV mode and you had all the family over and everyone wanted a shower all of a sudden, you can do what we call put the unit in boost mode, push one button, the unit will start, and after 20 minutes you've got enough hot water to basically have another shower. So some of the key advantages of our system, I suppose, to whatever else is available on the market. So we talk about COP, and that's coefficient performance. So that's the amount of energy that we put into the system as opposed to what we get out. Ours is an industry-leading COP, so we get a highest COP of 6.02. Now what the variables are there, so that's in perfect conditions. We've got a nice cold, crisp, hot, cold water supply, and we've got a nice hot ambient day, or when I say hot, 30 degrees is, really when these units perform well. I touched on the fast recovery rate there, so an average of 2.5 hours for 315 litres. The way we model some of our demand, I suppose, if we allow 50 litres per person per day, that generally sort of works out well. So 315 generally is enough to service a family of 4, or even 5, depending on, individual demands and spa baths and kids and all that sort of stuff. So our external controller, user-friendly, easy access, preset and adjustable options. So that's important for the end user. So it doesn't have to be a technician or an electrician or anyone to make little adjustments to when you, the consumer, want to do your heating cycle. It's easy to do. Importantly, built-in Legionella control, which is a requirement under the Australian standard. Every water heater that is available in Australia that has a little watermark certificate needs to have that Legionella cycle built into it. And importantly, we've got a frost and freeze control. So in particular, some of the colder areas, we've got some of our units up in Jindabyne and some of those really cold areas. What happens is with cold and I know a good neighbour of mine has had a system that's, experienced some cold weather and has potentially burst. Cold water, once it freezes, it expands and it can blow pipework apart and all that sort of stuff. Our system has a built-in protection into that. So it enables you to basically protect the pipework, protect the system as well.
Jason?
Yes? Perform at their best, and that's when I'm talking about the coefficient performance. So,
and so what's the, as a user,
yep.
What's the difference between performing well and not performing well? Take longer to heat up the water, or what's the actual, how does that?
It's basically got to do with the amount of energy that you put in to what you get out, and that's what we're talking about, coefficient performance. So if you put 1 kilowatt of energy in, as an average on our unit, we'd probably say 4 kilowatts out, as an average, up to 6. Now that is a variable, okay, so that's got to do with your water temperature, it's got to do with the ambient air temperature, and the residual energy that's left in the tank, because generally we're not going to be heating a whole 315 litres. So, yeah, that's right. Yep. So, but generally the heating cycles will be similar anyway. So it might run for an extra half an hour, and that's got a lot to do on your own demand. So if you've got, yeah, absolutely, yep. And that's the same with the solar system as well. So unfortunately, they're not as efficient because there's not as much solar gain in the in the sky available. So so that I've actually touched on some modelling here to give you an idea on how much energy that we use and how we store that energy, I suppose. So we've got an average energy saving of around about 75%, which is probably, talking more about what you've got at the moment. Doris, you've got a resistive element water heater, so we would be around 75% more efficient than your water heater at the moment. That's with 0 PV. With PV, that's higher again. So we would be well into your 90s if your solar system is performing well, it's in good condition, and we've got that surplus energy that you'd otherwise be exporting to the grid. Yep. Average noise, again, I touched on this before, it's really important because a lot of these water heaters are right beside bedrooms. We are a compressor, so they're not silent, but we are about as quiet as what you get in the industry these days. Anyone who's heard these units running, realises that they are incredibly quiet. So, ozone-friendly CO2 refrigerant, which we touched on before. And we've touched on also the smart top-down heating. Does that sort of make sense to everyone, the way we do it? So as traditional element, we sort of plug into the side of a tank and it sort of heats that, and then hot water sort of rises. We're actually drawing that cold water and we're putting it straight into where the demand is coming from. So all hot water services, they all draw from the top of the tank, because that's the hottest part of the tank. We're returning the water into that, pretty much that exact location. Average 3 hours heating cycle per day to heat up a 315 litre tank from 20 degrees to 60 degrees. So when we're heating our water heater, when our water heater is heating, I should say, we're basically drawing that water out at, say, 15, 20 degrees, and we're returning it straight into the tank at a constant 63 degrees. Okay, so unlike superheated water around electric elements, we control that really well. So, and that's part of the reason why tank manufacturers in particular love us, because we don't make the tanks work really hard. They're working nice and steady all the time, which generally helps with the longevity of the system. So we want you guys, it doesn't really help us, but we want you guys to have a 10, 15 year life cycle easily out of one of our systems. And all our tank models are all modelled for STC, VEEC and Vic Solar as well. So yeah, as we touched on there, average of 3 kilowatt hours electric consumption per day, 5 times less than an electric water heater. Okay, and I will touch on some repayment sort of stuff too. So how much is this unit how long is it going to take to repay? And I know you touched on it before, Glenn, just in regards to some of the solar PV stuff. And minimise tank daily heat loss. All of the tanks that we supply have to meet the Australian standard, and they do have a certain what they call an R rating when we talk about energy retention into the tank. So they do hold energy into the tank overnight. So if we did a heating cycle and say, for instance, there was no real demand, in the morning, what we'd find after the tank is stratified, so the hot water's gone to the top and the cold has come to the bottom, that heating cycle might only take an hour. So just to get through its Legionella cycle for the next day. We've got an average running cost of around $360 AUD annually, so 5 times less than the electric heaters. So, and an estimated payback period of 2 to 3 years. Again, I'll touch on this is without PV. If we have PV and we can utilise that energy that we'd otherwise be exporting to the grid, it would be quicker than that again. Of course. Yeah, I have got some modelling. I haven't got that in the presentation, but I've actually got some modelling that I can show you, and I'm happy to after this, in regards to all sorts of different technologies, whether it be electric boosted solar, gas boosted solar, gas storage, electric storage, gas instantaneous, so LPG and natural gas. So I've got some interesting stuff. So great question though, because it is completely valid, So, yep. Heat. Yes. So we're constantly heating at 63 degrees, which is enough to basically kill that Legionella. So what we need to basically do a complete cycle all that water through the system once a day, depending on the temperature or the residual energy that's left into that tank. So say if we've had very little demand, the system might only need to run for an hour or so, just to basically get that. We actually measure the temperature at the bottom of the tank. So the system will stop when we get to 58 degrees at the bottom of the tank. So, but I can show you some of the stuff as well on how that sort of works. So our units come standard with what we call a smart controller. Now, what that does, it does quite a few things. One thing it does enable us to do, which is the critical part of this, is enables us to control when we're doing that heating cycle. Right, Doris, for you, PV cycle, Yep, that'd work really well. So 10 till 4, depending on your demand, and that will generally be enough. So Alan, you probably go on option 1. So you've got basically an on-demand system, and we'd probably do a little bit of a smaller one for you. And so basically when the temperature drops, the compressor starts. Pretty straightforward. So basically that enables us to have a number of different control measures in with our system. So so that's basically what it looks like. Built-in frost protection, Legionella control, error codes to help with problem solving, and waterproof casing. So this here looks a little bit technical, but that's basically the sizing of our tanks. So that's all the different lengths, widths, heights for all our different models of tanks. That's available on our website, so have a good look at that, and that'll help with some people that have got systems inside that they want to replace. You've got an old internal electric system, so that'll give you an idea on some of the space requirements there. Solar analytics, and as Glenn touched on before, so we can, and it's up to you, so some people, and I'm probably going to do it, I'm a bit of an energy nerd too, I'm going to have solar analytics on my house, so I can actually see my PV system, how much energy my heat pump is drawing, so I can just get a really good understanding and get the maximum out of that heating cycle. So with 2 little kids, it does annoy me when I get home, and at the moment I've got a gas water heater and I'm about to change, and it annoys me when I hear the gas noise start up because I've got PV. So for me it makes absolute perfect sense to have this. STCs and VEECs, so that gives you a bit of an idea. So in Healesville, we are Zone 5, so we get the highest level of VEEC and STC available in the country. So STCs for a 315 litre in Healesville are 34 at roughly $36 each. So if you do the math there, it works out at $1,200 and something dollars. Doris?
Why do we get the highest?
Because of our environment. Because basically the way they do it, we've got different zones, and Zone 5 is not actually shown here, but right in the middle here, right in the sort of the alpine, sort of the higher sort of regions, that's what they call Zone 5, which is just a little bit higher again. So, and that's basically the way they do that. So with VEEC, depending on the postcodes, and obviously Healesville, we're 3777, so we can get anywhere from 29 to 31 VEECs, again roughly at that $36 mark. So it is very, very attractive at the moment. That's our case study there. So we can see there, that's some solar analytics. So what we've got there is it's a small system, this one. So we've got a 2 kilowatt unit, and that's basically our heat pump, the energy sort of using there. So if we say we've got from roughly 10 o'clock in the morning to roughly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we've done a complete heating cycle, and we've used 2 to 3 kilowatt hours of energy. And that's, as opposed to our electric tank, which is the same here above. So which generally does hotter, does all that all day long. So that's part of the reason why, we're so efficient the way we actually heat water. So an 80% reduction. All right, so that's our 315 litre tank. Yep. Annual energy savings, cost assumptions, annual cost savings, payback. Just talk about payback period for a little bit. It's an important, so we're certainly not the cheapest water heater on the market, so the technology we use is at the forefront of what's available in the market now with the CO2, with the smart controller, with the different tanks and that we use. So what I would like to do, anyone who's interested tonight, certainly register through the Healesville CoRE website, and I can actually do some modelling for you and give you guys an idea of what the payback is going to be as opposed to what you've got at the moment and whatever else is out in the market. So I'll have to be a little bit quick just getting through this. We're getting wound up by the chief in the corner here. So again, that's a little bit of a system schematic there. All right, so again, if you understand, we draw from the bottom. We go through the heat exchanger and we return straight into the top. That's also where we draw our hot water from. So that's why our heat recovery or our demand is so quick to respond. Yep. Tank water is generally okay, just depending on, it's got to do with the amount of dissolved bits and pieces and pHs and that in it. So if you're concerned about it, my advice is to do a water quality test. Generally, as a rule, glass line tanks will suit a vaster array of water qualities as opposed to stainless steel. And I'm happy to talk to anyone about those two different systems about that. So that's basically our commissioning guide. So we've got a 3-step commissioning guide, which is very, very simple. Everyone goes, oh, heat pumps, they're tremendously technical. They're not. All we are is a standard electric water heater. Instead of a resistive element, we've got a compressor beside it. So they're very, very simple. They can, even with contractors and plumbers, they can get quite, worried about it. There's nothing to worry about. They're very, very simple. And there's some photos of some installs there too. So they can be nice and neat. See, in this particular one, we've got the compressor above the tank, and this one is the compressor is ground mounted. So I'll finish on this Healesville bulk buy program that we've been running now for quite a while, and I think, Jeff, we've done 15 or 20, I suppose, in the Healesville community. Register your interest through the Healesville CoRE website, and thanks for everyone for coming tonight and the people that have registered online. Then basically what we do, we book a home visit. Now that's a $50 donation to the CoRE. Then either myself or one of the 2 contractors, being Steve Thomas Plumbing or Stefan from Kudos Electrical, will come out and basically say, okay, yeah, this is roughly what it's going to be. From there, we'll basically agree on a complete quote with no hidden extras. So that's what the quote's going to be. It will not change from that. From there, we'd take a 20% deposit, book an install date. You guys pay for the system upon it being freighted from our facility in Hallam. You pay the contractors on the date of installation, and then we claim the rebates. So then we start to talk about STC, VIC and VIC Solar. I'll just mention that VIC Solar, we need to pre-register for that if we wanted to utilise that. You get that once, it is means tested, and myself or Glenn can certainly talk to you about that tonight, and some of the intricacies, I suppose, about it. So basically once that happened, that's generally for the STC and VEEK, that's generally about a week or 2's notice, and that'll just get paid straight back into your account. And then from there, we get to enjoy the benefits of a high efficiency, whisper quiet, environmentally friendly water heater, I meant to say, year on year, for years on years to come. So thanks again to the CoRE for having us, and please reach out to me. I'll be here for the next hour or so. If you've got any questions, reach out and say good day.